What is that, Texas? Is that where men sound like men and boys sound like boys? Good morning. Welcome to Storytime with John Solo. As you can hear, I'm outside. As you can see, I would imagine too. Today is Trouble by Roe Horvat. This is book number 3, and I believe it's called the Winter Sun series. I'm not sure if this is a trilogy or how many are going to happen, but we're on book number 3. Pay close attention to the subtle clues I give my lovely assistant Tracy Johns today about how silly we are at work. You're going to hear mistakes and such. This is a live work in progress. This is me, as I like to say, making the sausage. Because I know how y'all love sausage. Spicy! Anyways, enjoy. Remember, I'm performing live as well in front of a crowd in Discord, so you're going to hear me talking to them too. Leave a comment if you like. And I suppose I should start saying this. Hit like and subscribe. That does help the YouTube algorithm, if I can say algorithm. So enjoy. Have fun. Love you all. This was what I would become famous for. When I'd agreed to this gig, I thought it would be like the last flick I'd done, except with another director and with a small added bonus. I'd be in heat. Another director and with a small added bonus. I'd be in heat. Contraception was provided and paid for. They'd already inserted the small device into my womb, according. I'd be in heat. Contraception was provided and paid for. They'd already inserted the small device into my womb, and according to the doctor, it was more than 99% effective. It had occurred to me at the swanky doctor's office that this movie might be better funded, but I didn't think much about it. I wasn't used to being optimistic. The first day I met the director, I realized I was in for something different. First and foremost, he was an Omega. In the porn industry, the Omegas were always... And I sounded like a real man, which is controversial with Tracy. Different. First and foremost, he was an Omega. In the porn industry, different. First and foremost, he was an Omega. In the porn industry, why can't I say in the porn industry? I should be able to say that. Different. First and foremost, he was an Omega. In the porn industry, the Omegas were almost always the guys in front of the camera and not the ones behind it. And second, he looked all posh and smooth, like a politician or a businessman. He even had a suit on when we met. The last director I'd worked with met me dressed in jeans, a torn sleeveless shirt, and a backward ball cap. This guy, Brian was his name, was all sleek and cool, from the tips of his styled hair to his gleaming dress shoes. He shook my hand, offered me coffee, and asked if I'd read the fine print before I signed the contract. Read. Don't you correct me, little girl, I got it. Shoes. He shook my hand, offered me coffee, and asked if I'd read the shoes. He shook my hand, offered me coffee, and asked if I'd read the fine print before I signed the contract. Yes, sir. The only thing that stood out to me was the doctor's exam afterward. Why do I need that? I really hoped they didn't secretly plan on something creepy or dangerous. I had my fantasies, but I didn't do hardcore kink. I didn't trust anyone enough. Brian, when the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act as a prism and form a rainbow. That's how an Omega should sound right there. Sassy.
Just to let you know, this one is a good guy. He's not a slime ball.
Right. Of course he is.
Fine, you want to go in totally cold? You go
can't you,
right ahead.
Can't you hear how much of a not slime ball he is? He's Brian. Brian.
I'll just sit here and shut up.
Well, Omegas need to sound like Omegas. What is that, Texas? Is that where men sound like men and boys sound like boys?
No.
Damn racist. I didn't do hardcore kink. I didn't trust anyone enough. Oh, that. We merely want to make sure that you're not pregnant. The contraceptive you've been given should be one of the safest on the market, but we're not taking any chances. In case you, against all odds, get pregnant, this way, you'll know as soon as possible. The compensation will be paid out, 40% immediately, and the remaining 60% after the child is born, if you decide to carry to term. The compensation was $50,000. I had to recount the zeros and almost swallowed my tongue. $50,000? For a while there, I hoped I'd get knocked up, but the chances was basically nil. For a while there, I hoped I'd get knocked up, but the chance was basically nil. How do you feel? Brian smiled at me. He looked like someone's dad and not a porn director. Did he have kids? Kind of excited, to be honest. He grinned wider. Wonderful. You've met your colleagues already. What's your impression? Great. What was I supposed to say? 4 alphas, all of them fucking underwear models? I hadn't seen their dicks, but this was porn, so I could imagine. My hands were clammy. Sorry to be blunt, but let's change characters in the middle of a paragraph. This was porn, so I could imagine. My hands were clammy. Sorry to be... This was porn, so I could imagine. My hands were clammy. Sorry to be blunt, but why me? I'm a former rent boy and did only some low-budget movies during the past year. It's not like I have a name or anything. And I'd seen the other guys at the audition last month. Holy shit. Some of those boys were beautiful. Brian squinted at me. I saw those movies, yes. See, Kirby, you have something that's very rare in this industry. I raised my eyebrows at him. Visible enjoyment. You look like you're having the time of your life when you're having sex on camera. He shrugged. You can also be subtle and changeable. You have a talent. I had a talent for getting fucked. Well, I'd take it and be grateful because having a stable income and a place to stay still hadn't lost its charm. Besides, getting those 4 porn stars for the duration of the heat would be the experience of a lifetime. For the duration of the heat would be the experience of a lifetime. I want you to meet our consultant. Come with me. A consultant? Did he mean someone to take care of the payouts and taxes and such? Why would I need to meet him? We passed another office and ended up in a room with low sofas and a coffee maker. A man sat there doing something on his phone, and he looked nothing like a tax consultant. Walter, this is Kirby. The guy shot up and turned to me. He was about 40, a tall alpha with a sly, somewhat cocky smirk, dressed in black jeans with holes on the knees and a leather jacket. His face made me apprehensive for no specific reason. Kirby, this is Walter Sebastian. He's a former heat teacher, and he'll be present for a large part of the production. Besides your co-stars, he'll be the only alpha on the set. He'll make sure that we do things right. The man shook my hand and smiled toothily. A former heat teacher? Meaning he used to guide rich single omegas throughout their heat. I was going to be a heat teacher. My hand and smiled toothily. A former heat teacher? Meaning he used to guide... My hand and smiled toothily. A former heat teacher? Meaning he used to guide rich single omegas through their heats? If he was an omega, he'd be a rent boy, a whore. But alphas who fucked for money were healers and teachers. Yeah, right. I swallowed my bitterness. I guessed he must have had a bunch of You don't need training. Just get in there and fuck him. Yeah, right. I swallowed my bitterness. I guessed he must have had a bunch of training and certifications, so it wasn't entirely the same thing, and I should be glad there'd be a sort of supervisor present. Walter Sebastian looked all excited about the prospect. The same thing, and I should be glad there'd be a sort of supervisor present. Walter Sebastian looked all excited about the prospect of watching me get gangbanged during heat. Do things right? I checked. What do you mean by that? Brian smiled and hugged my shoulders as if we were old friends. See, Kirby, since the beginning, the porn industry has been focused on alphas, on their viewing enjoyment and their needs. In recent years, we've seen a shift. More creators are releasing content that pays tribute to Omega pleasure. It gets even more distinct with the surplus of amateur footage getting shared each day. He paused dramatically, and I could tell he really dug his own shit. I didn't mind. Whatever got me a decent job and a paycheck, I was in. What I want to do is take this one step further. I want some cum in my throat. Didn't mind. Whatever got me a decent job and a paycheck, I was in. What I want to do is take this one step further. I want to show a genuine heat experience with maximum pleasure for the Omega. While there's an abundance of heat porn made all the time within mainstream production, the Omega never transcends his confines as a mere object of the alpha's desire. He's a crude fantasy without substance, a wet hole for the knot. I want to make a movie that Omegas can fantasy without substance, a wet hole for the knot. I want to make a movie that Omegas can identify with, that reflects their own desires and fulfills their fantasies. I want Omegas to watch it and immerse themselves. Immerse. That's a word. That reflects their own desires and fulfills their fantasies. I want Omegas to watch it and immerse themselves in pleasure. They'll wish to become you. I thought I got what he was saying, but he sounded a bit too fancy for my taste, which made me suspicious. It was just fucking, after all. Which made me suspicious. It was just... Oh, shit. That was supposed to be Brian.
Do we have Walter?
Brian? No, that was Brian. Okay, so I did that right.
You did. I'm asking, do we have Walter?
I doubt it. No, sir.
I hear him as your younger professor voice.
Walter. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act as a prism and form a rainbow. I'm a young professor. That's what I sound like. That sounds a lot like Tuvok.
Yeah, it sounds like Tuvok, but it usually doesn't.
Walter Sebastian. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act as a prism and form a rainbow. Just nothing but complaints today, huh? That's all you're going to do? Just complain? Which made me suspicious. It was just fucking, after all. What Brian is trying to say is that we'll make sure our boys keep blowing your mind. They're not here to get off on you, they're here to get you off. I smirked. I might like Walter Sebastian, after all. After all. Funny thing, I was supposed to sleep on set. The heat waves could be quite unpredictable and come whenever. The deal was that while the alphas could go rest from time to time in a separate bedroom nearby, I was to stay here. Time to time in a separate bedroom nearby, I was to stay here. So after the first day of filming, which had been just me stuffing myself with a nice big dildo on the evening before the heat, an assistant handed me a bathrobe and showed me to the bathroom. I showered, and when I came back, the equipment was turned off and shoved to the sides, and the bedroom looked almost normal. Brian sat in an armchair in front of a tray of food. "Hope this is okay." I eyed the tray. It was only healthy stuff. soup, salad, and some expensive bread with seeds in it, and a glass of juice.
Stop. You added an and.
That's because it should have been there. Hope this is okay. I eyed the tray. It was only healthy stuff. Soup, salad, some expensive bread with seeds in it, and a glass of juice. I wasn't too hungry. My appetite always disappeared close to heat, so it was fine. Sure. Thank you. Good. He clasped his hands together and rubbed them. I'll let you sleep soon. The crew is staying on this floor. Once you feel a wave approaching, push the red button here. He pointed at a small panic button by the bed. I don't care if it's at 4 a.m. The sooner you let me know, the better. After the first wave, someone will be here with you all the time. You know, the better. After the first wave, someone will be here with you all the time. Okay. He was looking at me like he wanted to say something more, so I waited. Are you feeling good? He asked. Yeah. I'm glad we did the dildo thing. Are you feeling good? He asked. Yeah. I'm glad we did the dildo scene first. Made me nice and relaxed. I winked. I actually preferred making solo stuff, but Brian didn't need to know that. You were wonderful. We have excellent footage from today. Cool. Thanks. I dug into the salad. Brian wasn't finished, though. You've had several sessions with Walter, he said slowly, eyeing me cautiously. It's definitely a C word, though. You've had several sessions with Walter, he said slowly, eyeing me curiously. Walter was supposed to prepare me and the alphas for the filming. Safety, sexual preferences, hard limits, things about my heat, stuff like that. But we'd stumbled upon some old shit when we'd talked, and one thing had led to another. In the end, Walter had picked my brain for hours because he thought I'd had traumatic experiences. Well, duh. However, we didn't blab to better. Traumatic experiences. Well, duh. Traumatic experiences. Well, duh. However, he didn't blab to Brian about the specifics because he kind of became my sex therapist and was bound by confidentiality. Walter was great. Thanks for that. Kind of became my sex therapist and was bound by confidentiality. Walter was great. Thanks for that. Brian nodded, but his eyes wandered around. Look, you've been through things I can't even imagine, and in an ideal world, I would wish to make this a positive and maybe even cathartic experience for you. Walter identified my triggers, and the guys will respect my limits, I said. We're good. Sighing, Brian scratched his neck and blew out a breath. We both know that this industry causes harm to people on a daily basis. I work hard to create stuff that's different. He looked me in the eye, all sad and worried, and I realized that Brian genuinely cared. That it wasn't just talk. I want to create erotic content that's liberating for Omegas. I would be the worst hypocrite if I hurt one of my performer. Look, when you're getting a dicky up the boomy, I want you to feel good about it. I want to create erotic content that's liberating for Omegas. I would be the worst hypocrite if I hurt one of my performers in the process. Do you get what I mean? I think so. I need you to feel safe, okay? So if it's something not right, tell me. If you're afraid, feel threatened.
So if something's not right.
I said most of that. I think so. I need you to feel safe, okay? So if something's not right, tell me. If you're afraid, feel threatened, forced, uncomfortable, or just want a different flavor of ice cream. How did ice cream come into this? If you're afraid, feel threatened, forced, uncomfortable, or just want a different ice cream flavor, tell me immediately, and I will fix it. Not like he could fix me, but he was trying, and I appreciated it. Brian, you brought in Walter and you've chosen great guys for me to work with. We're good. I'm actually looking forward to it. Finally, he seemed to relax. Okay, good. I tried the soup and it was so delicious I suddenly felt hungry, heat or no heat. The soup's fantastic, thanks. Brian patted my back and watched me eat for a while. He wasn't creepy about it, so I didn't mind. You like food, don't you? I grinned, tapping the spoon on my lips. What tipped you off? The piggy noises I make? He laughed and stood. Good night, Kirby. And thank you for today. No problem. After I'd eaten, I went to brush my teeth and pee. I worried I wouldn't be able to sleep with the shadows of the equipment looming in the corners and the strange sounds of the studio, but I must have fallen asleep almost immediately. Longest prologue ever. Immediately. Now this was as close to nirvana as anyone had ever gotten. I barely had to move because the alpha under me, Dex was his name, lifted me up and down on his cock. Dex was fucking gorgeous. A tall black guy with an 8-pack, smoldering eyes, and the cheekbones of a god. And damn, what a cock. It was no contest, the greatest dick I'd ever gotten into me. Maybe it was the heat, but shit, I loved that dick. Right now it stroked the front wall of my hole and grazed the mouth to my womb on each thrust. I was coming again. Or maybe I was coming still, who cared? Eric held my head with both hands, thrusting into my mouth. His cock was shorter than Dex's, but fat and delicious. The taste of his pre-cum made me groan. There was so much of it that it leaked into my mouth. Eric liked me, I could tell. He kept petting my hair and touching my face when he fucked my mouth, and he stared at me with this intense look in his eyes. Yeah, he liked me. My entire torso was covered in cum. Mine, Claude's, and Max's. I felt filthy and fucking awesome. Claude and Max were rubbing their swollen dicks on me where they could. From what I'd heard, having a knot grow outside of an Omega's body could be unpleasant. But Brian said the exposed knots were part of the plan. They exhibited the erotic power of the Omega. Brian said shit like that on a regular basis. The best moment was yet to come. This had been Walter's idea, and I was so in. This had been Walter's idea, and I was so in. Claude and Max took my nipples into their mouths. The way they sucked was bordering on painful and absolutely fucking perfect. They opened their mouths wide, took the fleshy parts in, and pulled while rubbing the undersides with their tongues. The twin sensations were overwhelming. I couldn't help the keening sounds I kept making around Eric's cock. Suddenly, Eric retreated. He stroked himself with both hands while his knot grew. A fucking gallon of cum landed in my mouth and across my sweaty face. He stroked himself with both hands while his knot grew. A fucking gallon of cum landed in my mouth and across my sweaty face. The taste was amazing. I gulped it all down, grabbed the knot and licked all around the swollen cock. Walter. Down, grabbed the knot and licked all around the swollen cock. Great, Kirby. Keep going. Down, grabbed the knot and licked all around the swollen. I thought it was Walter, because it was Walter's idea. No, it wasn't Walter's idea?
It was Walter's idea, but Brian is the director.
Well, why would Walter not yell?
He's not the director.
It doesn't make any sense. It was his idea. Down, grabbed the knot and licked all around the swollen cock. Great, Kirby, keep going. As if I could tear myself away, I made love to that thing, cleaning it, kissing, suckling. Eric stroked my hair, looking at me as if I was about to push out his firstborn. The guy was sweet. Then the suction on my nipples tightened. Dex shoved his cock deeper into me, and I lost coordination. I pulled Eric's knot to my face, holding it close while I came my brains out for the 100th time, and still they kept sucking. I was going to start making milk if they kept it up. Strange sensations gathered in my torso. From the pulling on my nipples, small electric sparkles arose, tendrils of energy shooting outward, and my entire chest throbbed, the muscles underneath my nipples all warm. The feeling was nothing but exquisite. I threw my head back and wailed. Eric's knot rubbed over my open lips. I pushed my chest out, chasing the amazing suction. See, it's Walter. I pushed my chest out, chasing the amazing suction. Well, Eric's got his dick in him, so it's different. I pushed my chest out, chasing the amazing suction. That's it, guys. Just a bit longer. It was Walter's voice. He's almost there. Where? Was there more? My nipples felt electric already. They prickled, and the flesh underneath them began tingling. More, and even more. Oh, fuck. 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 I screamed, and then I exploded. The tingles became fireworks. Dex, now. Again, Walter, but I barely understood what was happening. My nipples fucking climaxed. Climaxed? Yeah. Oh. Again, Walter, but I barely understood what was happening. My nipples fucking climaxed. That was how it felt. Every sucking pull sent waves of pleasure outward, drowning my entire body in it. Dex's cock thrust even harder. His hands squeezed my hips, and another explosion of pleasure tore through me, this time from my very center. He had breached the channel to my womb. A small frisson of fear made my eyes go wide. I couldn't take more. They'd fry my brain. But then the sensations in my nipples met and tangled with the tendrils coming from my womb, and yeah, there really wasn't a way to describe that feeling. Dex doused my womb with cum. Claude and Max sucked my chest. Eric pushed his knot into my mouth, and I went to heaven. See, Eric's an omega, but he's got a voice like a man, and he's got his knot.
A, Eric is an alpha. B, you haven't heard him speak. What the hell are you talking about?
I thought Eric was the director.
That's Brian.
That's the same name. Jesus. Stop confusing people. I'm scrolling ahead to see when this goddamn prologue ends. All right, 3 pages. One more scene break.
I love you, John.
I love you too.
Are you sure? You sound like you want to punch my lights out today.
No, it's just you're kind of racist, To heaven. Brooke, it doesn't matter how many pages there are. What if it was a picture book? Would that make a difference? To heaven. Once I'd slept it off, nodded and wrapped in Dex's arms, Brian showed me a few clips. It looked like a sacred ritual or something. The 4 massive alphas surrounding my... The pages kind of stick together, Brooke, but I'll get you one. Nodded and wrapped in Dex's arms, Brian showed me a few clips. It looked like a sacred ritual or something. The 4 massive alphas surrounded my pale, slim body, hitting all my sweet spots all at once. I got wet watching the moment Eric came on my face and into my mouth. The way I gazed up at him and then grabbed his knot. Well, shit, I looked like a greedy animal. And it was hot. The detail of my groin with Dex's knot growing in me blew my mind. I could see how my underbelly bulged a little with the knotting. But what was fascinating was when the camera zoomed in on my reddened dick. It fucking danced. Untouched and exposed, my erection throbbed and jerked, spitting small pearls of cum all over the place like a tiny fountain. My balls contracted with the breeding orgasm that I would forever remember as the most insane rush of my entire life. I would forever remember as the most insane rush of my entire life. I got now what Brian or Eric or Hugh or whatever his name was meant by showcasing Omega. I would forever remember as the most insane rush of my entire life. I got now what Brian meant by showcasing Omega pleasure. I didn't remember much of the aftermath, so it was interesting to see it on screen. My chest was blotched with red, drops of cum everywhere. Claude and Max kissed and licked the tips of my nipples. I watched, mesmerized, as the me on the screen pulled on Eric's hips. I held him close, rubbing my face against his knot like a cat. Had I really done that? Wow. Apparently. Max crawled down my body and began licking my cock. It flexed under his tongue and began reading the previous line. I really done that? Wow. Apparently. Max crawled down my body and began licking my cock. It flexed under his tongue. Dex circled his hips and my body went limp. He must have pulled out of my womb. I seemed out of it. Then the three burly alphas cleaned me all over.
Stop. Big burly alphas.
Yeah, like people didn't know they were big. Hips and my body went limp. He must have pulled out of my womb. I seemed out of it. Then the three big burly alphas cleaned me all over. They kissed and licked, wiped with washcloths, while their exposed knots brushed my skin here and there. All the time Dex rocked my knotted body. My eyes were closed, but my cock was still hard, and sometimes it jerked. I must closed, but my cock was still hard, and sometimes it jerked. Closed, but my cock was still hard, and sometimes it jerked. I must have still been buzzing. Finally, the three alphas stepped away, climbing off the bed. Dex curled around me, and the light dimmed. Brian squeezed my shoulders. This is going to be groundbreaking, Kirby. Breaking, Kirby. And Brian had been right. A year and a half had gone by since I'd made it big. We'd won awards, and I'd gotten more money than I'd ever dreamed of. The movie became the most watched porn flick in a decade. There were accolades, and there were criticism. The movie became the most watched porn flick in a decade. There were accolades, and there was criticism, of course, shaming, and plenty of hate mail. But I was too happy to give the noise much attention. For the first time in my life, I had my own place, an entire freaking apartment. 2 bedrooms in a high-rise in an okay part of Dalton City, and a parking spot in an underground garage that I'd never use. Sex toy companies wanted me in their commercials, and there was a line of breeding knots with my face and name on the packaging. People invited me to parties and paid me to attend, and more movie offers kept streaming in. I'd earned so much in just 1 year that I could quit porn forever. Except I didn't want to. I liked it. I didn't want to. I liked it. Aside from Brian, I worked with another Omega director. No more shady deals in shabby motels for film sets. I did high-quality stuff. I even got a say in who I worked with. Rumors were circulating about whether I'd do another Heat project and what it would be, and Brian already had a plan. More documentary-like, he said. Just one alpha. This time he wanted to capture a sincere connection. He was all about the lurve. The fuck is that?
Love, said in weird speak. All about the nerve.
This time he wanted to capture a sincere connection. He was all about the lurve. I had my doubts, but he was the director. Porn doesn't have to be crude, Kirby. It doesn't have to be cynical, right? People want to feel loved. There's so much beauty and depth to physical connection, so why do we always try to downplay that? Because vanilla looks boring on film? I haven't said anything about us doing it vanilla. he said. I haven't said anything about us doing it vanilla. With that, he winked at me. Emerson and Burke were having a baby, and Brian and my old co-star Eric were now married. They're the same. They've never been in the same room together. Baby, and Brian and my old co-star Eric were now married. Brian claimed he didn't ask him to, but Eric quit porn. He worked as a PT at a hotel and spa at the harbor. Brian claimed he didn't ask him to, but Eric quit porn. He worked as a PT at a hotel and spa at the harbor. I dated Dex for a while, but we were quit porn. He worked as a PT at a hotel and spa at the harbor. I dated Dex for a while, but we were a better match on set than off of it. Despite the fact he had fucked dozens of boys on camera since we got together, he got jealous when I filmed with someone else. In the end, he annoyed me, so I broke it off. I didn't date anyone after that. I was too busy to deal with the mess of relationships. I was too busy to deal with the mess of relationships. The biggest change for me was that I didn't wake up in a cold... It's got to be anyone after that. I was too busy to deal with the mess of relationships. The biggest change for me was that I didn't wake up in a cold sweat anymore after dreaming I was back on the street. And I was pretty damned happy about that. Then there was Hugh. We were friends, sort of. I wished him the best, yet I dreaded the day a clean-cut little Omega with a pristine past would show up and snatch him up from under my nose. It was selfish of me, but the rare pining glances he'd given me since Emerson and Burke's wedding were the only even remotely romantic thing in my life. I coveted them like small treasures. When I got lonely and emotional, I fantasized about how I might quit this business one day. I'd come to the pub, casually ask him out, and he'd smirk at me and call me kitten again. Years from now. Maybe. And thus ends the longest prologue in the history of prologues. Longer than the Odyssey. Filled with fat penises.
Long-winded.
It was good, but long.